I never thought it would come to this, but I think my brother and I are finally ready to go no contact with our mother. It feels strange even saying it out loud, like a heavy weight on my chest that I've been carrying for so long. The thought of it is both a relief and an absolute heartbreak. I mean, we're talking about our mother, someone who gave birth to us, raised us, or at least we thought she did. This decision hasn't come overnight, and it definitely wasn't something we ever imagined would be the outcome. But after years of emotional turmoil, manipulation, and broken trust, it feels like the only way left to protect ourselves. It's not a decision I came to lightly. I've wrestled with it for years, torn between guilt, resentment, and the small slivers of hope that things might change. I kept telling myself that maybe if I just gave her another chance, or if I made more effort, things would get better. But they never did. And the worst part? I don't think she even noticed. For a long time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I was too sensitive, too quick to judge. But after all these years, after all the times my brother and I have suffered in silence, I finally realize this is about survival. And in order to heal, in order to live a life that isn't defined by constant emotional pain, we have to let go. Looking back, the earliest memories I have of my mother are a blur of coldness, distance, and criticism. There were never any warm hugs or affectionate words. She wasn't the kind of mother who would sit by our bed at night to tell us a story or comfort us when we were upset. Instead, I remember her being in the kitchen a lot, always busy, always distracted, and when we needed her, she was never really there. I remember when I was about 7, I scraped my knee pretty badly while playing outside. It wasn't a serious injury, but it hurt. I went to her, expecting comfort, maybe a hug, "It's okay, you'll be all right," or even just a bit of concern. But instead, she looked at me with this cold, almost annoyed expression and said, "Stop whining, it's just a scrape, you'll survive." It stung. Not just the knee, but the fact that I could see her eyes shift back to her newspaper. As if my pain didn't even register. It was in moments like this that I learned to stop asking for her attention. I learned to deal with things on my own. As I got older, the criticism started to pile on. There was no room for mistakes. If I got an A- instead of an A on my report card, it was met with a sharp, "Why didn't you get an A?" If I accidentally broke something, even if it wasn't my fault, she would make it feel like I had committed the greatest offense. My brother and I started to tiptoe around her, always worried that our smallest mistake would send her into a fit of anger or disappointment. But it wasn't just us. My dad, who tried his best to keep the peace, often ended up caught in the middle. He was more gentle, more emotionally present. He'd often say, "She's just having a hard time, don't take it personally." But as we got older, it became clear to us that it wasn't just a rough patch. This was who she was. I could see the way he grew quieter, more withdrawn over the years. It felt like he was losing a part of himself, too. I've asked my dad before, when I was a teenager, why he stayed with her if it was so hard. His answer always struck me as sad and resigned. I thought things would get better, but they never did. Our relatives noticed, too, but nobody ever said anything openly. There were always whispered comments when we weren't around, comments about how distant she seemed, how we never really clicked with her. They tried to justify it, saying things like, "She's just old-fashioned," or "She's going through something." But I started to feel like they were just making excuses for her. I often overheard my aunt talking to my dad about how different we were from other families. How there was something off, but no one ever said it directly to her face. Maybe they were afraid. When I was a kid, I didn't understand. I thought maybe it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't lovable enough. Or maybe, just maybe, I wasn't trying hard enough to make her proud. But as I got older, the pieces started to fall into place. I realized that this wasn't normal, that my friends' mothers didn't treat them the way ours was treating us. They got hugs, praise, love. We got nothing. And that's when I started to understand. Our mother wasn't emotionally unavailable because she didn't know how to love. She was emotionally unavailable because she didn't know how to be there for us. And perhaps because she didn't really want to. By the time I reached my teenage years, the emotional distance between us and our mother had grown into a canyon. It wasn't just about her being cold anymore. It was something darker, something that chipped away at our confidence, our self-worth, little by little. She had a way of making everything feel like our fault, like we were burdens she had to tolerate, rather than children she chose to love. In high school, I remember being so excited about making it into the school play. I came home that day, grinning, expecting maybe, just maybe, a smile, some kind of pride in her eyes. But when I told her, she barely looked up from her phone. "That's a waste of time," she said flatly. "You should focus on something useful, like math." It hit me hard. I stopped talking about school after that. I stopped sharing good news with her altogether. She wasn't physically abusive, but there was something about her presence that made everything feel heavy. She barged into my room without knocking, criticized my clothes, my music, even my friends. I hear her on the phone talking to her friends, always putting me or my brother down in some veiled, gossipy way. He's lazy. She's dramatic. I don't know what I did to deserve this. There was this constant undercurrent of judgment. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I stood up for myself, I was ungrateful. And when I shut down completely, stopped reacting altogether, she said I had an attitude problem. But it was my brother who really started to unravel during those years. He was always quieter than me, more reserved, more cautious. But I started noticing changes in him. He stopped trying in school. His grades slipped. He spent more and more time alone in his room. I remember once walking past and hearing him crying softly. When I knocked and asked what was wrong, he just said, "I don't know how to talk to her. I don't think she even sees me." That broke me, because I felt the same way. We started leaning on each other more after that. We'd sit on the roof some nights, just the two of us, talking about everything: school, our dreams, our fears. It was the one place in the house where we felt safe, like we could breathe. He once said to me, "It's like she loves the idea of being a mother more than actually being one." And that stuck with me, because that was exactly it. One night, he had a panic attack after an argument with her over something stupid. He forgot to take the trash out. She screamed at him, called him useless, and slammed the door. I found him sitting on the bathroom floor, shaking. I held him like a child, even though he was already 15. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing. I hated how powerless we both felt. I hated that the one person who was supposed to protect us was the one making us feel like we were broken. And what made it worse was that no one outside really saw it. To the world, she was charming, well put together, involved. PTA meetings, bake sales, polite conversations with neighbors. But behind closed doors, she was ice. We started to whisper about leaving someday, him and me, moving out, building our own lives far away from her shadow. It became a sort of hope we clung to, a fantasy that helped us survive the day-to-day. He'd say, "One day, we'll be free. One day, we won't feel like this anymore." We were still kids then, but in those moments, we were each other's lifeline. And even though we didn't know it yet, we were already beginning to form the quiet resolve that would one day push us toward going no contact. Adulthood was supposed to bring distance, freedom, some kind of emotional buffer. I thought once I moved out, once I started building my own life, her power over me would fade. But I was wrong. The truth is, when someone like our mother doesn't respect boundaries, physical space doesn't really matter. She had a way of worming herself into our lives, uninvited and always demanding. I remember when I got my first apartment. I was so proud. It wasn't fancy, just a tiny one-bedroom with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was mine. I didn't even finish unpacking before she started criticizing it. "This place is depressing," she said when she visited. "No wonder you're still single. You really should have asked me before signing that lease." That one sentence stuck with me, not because it surprised me, but because it was exactly what I expected. No congratulations, no I'm proud of you, just judgment. It didn't stop there. She'd call constantly, sometimes 5, 6 times a day. If I didn't answer, I'd get long texts about how I didn't care and how she could die and no one would know. She turned every missed call into a melodrama. If I didn't invite her to something, I was punishing her. If I didn't take her advice, I was throwing my life away. Every decision I made, jobs, relationships, where I lived, was questioned, picked apart, and usually met with disapproval. My brother didn't fare much better. He went to college 2 states away, and I remember how excited he was to finally get some breathing room. But she didn't let him go. Not really. She'd show up unannounced, guilt him for not coming home on weekends, even tried to insert herself into his dating life. When he started seeing someone seriously, Maria, a kind, thoughtful woman, Mom lost it. She said Maria was manipulative, trying to steal him away from his family, and even accused her of turning him against her. I'll never forget the day my brother called me, his voice tight, barely holding it together. She told Maria I was still her little boy, that she'll always come first. She said I owe her my life. What the hell is that? It broke him. It broke me too. But the real turning point came a year later. My brother had just proposed to Maria. He hadn't told Mom yet because he was dreading the reaction. He asked me to come with him to break the news gently. We sat in her living room, me, my brother, Maria, and when he told her, she went completely cold. No congratulations, no joy. She looked Maria dead in the eye and said, "You'll never be enough for him, and he'll realize that one day." That was it. My brother stood up without a word, took Maria's hand and walked out. I followed. None of us said anything in the car. He dropped me off at my apartment, and we just sat there in silence for a minute. Then he said quietly, "I can't do this anymore. I don't want her at the wedding. I don't want her in my life." And I said, "Me neither." It wasn't a dramatic decision. No shouting, no final confrontation. Just a quiet, devastating realization that this woman, our mother, was never going to change. That the love we kept waiting for wasn't coming. That the approval we craved was never going to arrive. She didn't see us as people. She saw us as extensions of herself. And the moment we tried to live our own lives, she saw that as betrayal. In that moment, sitting in my brother's car with the city lights glowing outside the windshield, we both knew something had shifted. We weren't scared little kids anymore. We didn't owe her our peace of mind, our happiness, or our futures. That night, we made a pact, not immediately no contact, but space, real space, limited communication, clear boundaries. But even then, we didn't realize how much further it would need to go. It didn't happen overnight. After that awful night at my brother's engagement announcement, we both started pulling back from her. Fewer phone calls, shorter visits, more boundaries. But like always, she didn't respect them. Instead, she escalated. She bombarded my brother with messages, demanding explanations. When he didn't reply, she started sending long voice notes, half crying, half accusing, claiming he was killing her slowly and that Maria had brainwashed him. When I didn't come home for a holiday dinner, she sent me a picture of the empty dinner table with the message, You've turned your back on your family. Hope you're proud." It was relentless. One Sunday evening, my brother called me. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice before he said anything. "Man, I can't keep doing this." I sat in silence for a moment. I knew exactly what he meant. "She texted Maria again," he said. "Told her she'll regret marrying into our family. That she's destroying everything." My chest tightened. It wasn't even surprising anymore, just another line crossed. "We can't keep waiting for her to become someone she's not," I said quietly. "We've spent our whole lives hoping she'll wake up and realize how much she's hurt us." He let out a shaky breath. "I know, but saying it out loud, it feels like giving up." I paused. Maybe it's not giving up. Maybe it's choosing ourselves for once. That's when the real conversation began. We talked for hours that night about childhood memories that still stung, about the ways we'd both rationalized her behavior for years, told ourselves she was just stressed or doing her best. But the truth was, she'd never treated us like children she loved, only burdens she needed to control. "I feel guilty," my brother admitted at one point. "Like we're abandoning her." "I do too," I said. "But I also feel tired. So tired." We weren't angry in that moment, just heartbroken. Because even after everything, part of us still wanted to be loved by her, still wanted a mother. But that longing had been poisoning us for years. And slowly, we realized that the guilt we felt wasn't about her, it was about a fantasy we couldn't let go of. "She's never going to be the mom we needed," I said finally. "And keeping her in our lives just keeps reopening the wound." My brother went quiet and then said, "So, what do we do? Cut her off completely?" I think we have to." We didn't rush the decision. Over the next few weeks, we talked more, checked in with each other. We even considered therapy together, just to make sure we weren't acting out of spite or impulse. But every conversation led to the same conclusion. We were tired of hurting. The hardest part was the fear. What would she do when she found out? Would she twist the story to other relatives? Would we lose cousins, aunts, maybe even our dad if he took her side? Would she show up at our homes? Would she beg or threaten? We didn't know. That uncertainty haunted us. But we knew this too. Staying in contact meant sacrificing our peace. It meant raising our own future families, my brothers with Maria, mine someday, with this cloud hanging over us. And we didn't want that. So we made a plan. We drafted one final message, respectful but firm, explaining our decision. We told her this wasn't an act of hatred, but of self-preservation, that we weren't closing the door forever, but we needed time and space, real space. Then, one evening, we hit send, and we waited. It's been a few months now since we went no contact. Some days, it still feels surreal. I'll hear my phone buzz and instinctively brace myself for her name to pop up, but it never does. And that silence, though unnerving at first, has started to feel like peace. I've had a lot of time to reflect on her, on the damage, on everything that led us here. The truth is, I don't think she ever saw us as people with our own emotions. To her, we were extensions of herself, tools to fulfill whatever narrative she needed. When we were obedient, we were praised. When we had needs of our own, especially ones that clashed with hers, we were punished emotionally. She wasn't physically abusive. That's what always made things complicated. It was subtle, psychological, emotional whiplash. One moment, she'd be affectionate, overly so, and the next, she'd ice us out for saying something she didn't like. That inconsistency made it nearly impossible to feel safe. Looking back, I can see patterns I missed in the moment. She never apologized, not once. Every disagreement somehow became our fault. If we cried, we were dramatic. If we defended ourselves, we were disrespectful. If we pulled away, we were ungrateful children abandoning their mother. I don't know if she has undiagnosed mental health issues, maybe narcissistic tendencies, maybe unresolved trauma of her own, but understanding that doesn't excuse what she did, and it certainly doesn't mean we have to keep subjecting ourselves to it. What's helped most is talking about it. With my brother, with a therapist, with friends who get it. Saying things out loud that I used to bury deep inside. Admitting that my childhood wasn't just strict or tense, it was emotionally damaging, and it's taken years to undo the effects. I'm still unlearning things, like how to accept love without suspicion, how to set boundaries without guilt, how to speak up for myself without bracing for emotional punishment. But the difference now, I'm doing it. My brother and I check in with each other regularly. We've grown closer through all of this. It's like once we stopped trying to survive her, we finally had room to breathe and to really see each other. He's planning his wedding with joy now, not dread. I'm making decisions without the constant second-guessing that used to come from wondering, what will she think? There's still sadness. Of course there is. We didn't want this. We wanted a mother. We still do sometimes. But we're no longer chasing the idea of someone who never really existed. We're choosing ourselves instead. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. The first week after we went no contact was quiet, almost too quiet. I kept expecting something, a text, a call, a dramatic voicemail, but there was nothing. And somehow, that silence was more unsettling than if she'd started screaming through the phone. Then, on day 8, it began. First, it was a simple message. I guess I raised 2 heartless children. Just one line, no greeting, no context, pure guilt in a single sentence. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, every part of me wanting to fire back something, anything, to defend myself. But I didn't. I put the phone down, walked away, and cried harder than I had in years. After that, she sent more. Some days it was icy cold, accusations, passive-aggressive jabs about how no mother deserves this. Other days, she flipped the tone, playing the victim, begging to talk, saying she missed her babies. I didn't reply. Neither did my brother, and that made her escalate. She called my work once, left a message with the front desk saying it was an emergency. I found out later she called my brother's fiancé and asked if the wedding was still happening considering how unstable he had become. It was like she couldn't stand not having the upper hand anymore, like our silence was the ultimate betrayal. And it wasn't just her. Other people got involved. Our aunt messaged me on Facebook saying, "She's your mother. You only get one." A family friend texted me. I don't know what she did, but surely it doesn't justify cutting her off. That's cruel. Cruel. That word hit hard. I wanted to scream. You don't know what it's been like. But I didn't, because the truth is, unless you've lived it, grown up in a house where love is conditional, where your emotions are used against you, it's almost impossible to explain. Even some of my friends struggled to understand. One of them asked, "Can't you just talk it out?" And I realized in that moment, some people are lucky. They have mothers they can talk to, mothers who listen. We didn't. And despite knowing that, despite every logical reason for the decision, I still felt guilt, crushing guilt. I had nightmares, woke up in cold sweats, reread every message she sent and tried to convince myself she wasn't that bad. But then I'd remember the years of emotional manipulation, the gaslighting, the absence when I needed her most. My therapist called it trauma bonding. The way we attach ourselves to those who hurt us, believing that if we just try harder, we'll finally earn the love we crave. Letting go of that fantasy hurt like hell. There were days I doubted everything. I'd cry in the shower, clutching my phone, debating whether to call her. But then I'd talk to my brother, and he'd say, "Remember why we did this. You're not crazy. You're just finally free." And he was right. The emotional struggle didn't end the day we went no contact. If anything, it started then. Because now we had to rebuild ourselves, our sense of self-worth, our understanding of love and safety. But each day without her chaos felt a little lighter. And for the first time in our lives, we weren't surviving her. We were living on our terms. It's been almost a year since my brother and I made the decision to go no contact with our mother. And now, when I wake up in the morning, there's no heaviness in my chest. I don't check my phone with dread, waiting for a text that will ruin my day. I don't spend hours replaying old conversations in my head, wondering what I could have said differently to earn her love. I finally feel peace. It didn't happen overnight. There were months where I questioned everything. There were holidays that felt hollow, birthdays that came with guilt instead of celebration. But slowly, something started to shift. My brother and I grew closer than ever before. We talk openly now, in a way we never could when our mother's presence loomed over every interaction. We laugh more. We share our wins and struggles without fear of being judged or dismissed. I've also started investing in myself. Therapy helped, journaling helped, setting boundaries not just with her, but with anyone who tried to invalidate our pain helped. For the first time, I've started asking myself what I want, not what will make someone else approve of me. I've learned that love doesn't have to hurt, that being related by blood doesn't entitle someone to break you down. Going no contact wasn't just about cutting someone out. It was about choosing me, choosing my mental health, my peace, my future. And I won't lie, there are still moments when the grief sneaks in. Because when you go no contact with a parent, it's not just the person you lose. It's the hope, the fantasy, the version of them you always wished existed. But with time, that grief turns into acceptance. And that acceptance, it's powerful. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days still sting. But more and more, I feel free. And maybe the most important lesson of all, it's okay to walk away, even from family, if staying means losing yourself. So now, when people ask about my mom, I don't flinch, I don't lie, I just say the truth. And I'll end this the way I started. I never thought I'd say this, but going no contact with my mom was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. I finally feel like I can breathe. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I didn't share this story for sympathy. I shared it because I know there are others out there silently struggling with the same kind of pain. Maybe your parent is toxic. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's someone you love deeply but who hurts you just as deeply in return. And I just want to say this. It's okay to choose yourself. It doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human. Family isn't about blood. It's about love, respect, and safety. And if someone, even someone who raised you, consistently strips those things away from you, it's okay to walk away. Healing isn't easy. The decision to go no contact isn't easy. But peace? Peace is worth it. So if you're in a similar situation, torn between guilt and freedom, just know that you are not alone. And you don't owe anyone your suffering, not even your family. Take care of yourself. Choose your mental health. And never forget, you deserve to feel safe, valued, and whole. Thanks for listening.